Thanks so much for joining us. This is a wonderful segment, a wonderful topic we have for tonight to kick off the month of May. And this is just a continuation of prior segments focusing on pain management. So we're really excited to be able to focus on integrative therapies as part of a person's pain management regimen, right? As part of your overall care. So we're really happy to have you joining us this evening. So I will give another minute for some more guests to pop in. So as we're waiting for more to join us, let me introduce myself. So my name is Erin Pellegrin. I am our Senior Director of Culinary Nutrition and Education. And you may recognize me. I am often hosting these segments with our founder, Sue Weldon, who will be assisting with me this evening. Feel free to use that chat for any questions for Diane. Hopefully you saw her yoga segments that we posted live on our Facebook page. They were really informative and really helpful. So you'll definitely have to check those out. Before we move ahead, I want to start off, of course, by thanking our education sponsors. So we could not continue to bring you these segments every month without their ongoing support. Tonight's virtual events segments as part of UFH Connect are presented by West, Merck, Lilly, and Gilead Sciences. We have additional support from our gold sponsors, Pfizer, GSK, and Daiichi Sankyo, plus additional support from AbbVie, Agendia, and Tercera Therapeutics. So we are so grateful for their ongoing support. And boy, do we have a lot more segments coming to you. So as a little bit of a teaser, we've got a great month of May as part of our UFH Connect. So coming to you next week, we have another speaker series. So that will be May 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll provide all of those links so you can get registered for them. And this topic is all about rhythmic movement and neuropathy. Neuropathy is certainly something that I know a lot of our members share with me, especially when we're talking about cooking and preparing food in the kitchen. So we love to be able to share that with you. And we will be joined by Dr. Maryam Lustberg. She is the director of the Center for Breast Cancer at the Smilow Cancer Center and the Yale Cancer Center. She's also chief of breast medical oncology at the Yale Cancer Center. So this is one of her areas of focus and specialties. We are really excited to have her joining us. So that is next week, May 15th, 6 p.m. And then we have a virtual hangout. So love this topic. It's all about healing points, how acupuncture and acupressure support cancer care. Boy, is this an interesting topic. I know we talk a lot about acupuncture, but perhaps you're unaware of the benefit of acupressure, and we will be joined by one of the best. So Dr. Michelle Loy is coming to us from Weill Cornell Medicine, and she is quadruple board certified in integrative medicine, lifestyle medicine, medical acupuncture, and pediatrics. So she'll be covering all of the benefits and the role that acupressure can play in oncology. She'll be offering us hands-on guidance in terms of acupressure points that can help address a variety of side effects. Think pain, our topic tonight, nausea, fatigue, insomnia, hot flashes, and stress for those living with cancer. So that will be May 21st at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, virtual hangout. If you can't make either of those segments, as like tonight, we will be recording it, and all of our segments are available on our UFH Connect video library. So we'll put that link in the chat for you as well. So before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. Feel free to use the chat. We've got a great presentation ahead for our topic, pain management with yoga. So if you have questions for Diane, we may take a pause during her presentation, but of course we'll have plenty of time at the end for a little bit of interaction. We are recording this segment. It will be available as early as tomorrow. So if you want to come back and rewatch what you learned or share with someone else, you're absolutely welcome to do that also. And I want to remind everyone, our pain management, this is just one segment of a series of segments that we have done, focusing on a variety of integrative therapies. We've covered acupuncture, I should say, and pain management, Reiki, oncology massage, counseling. So we've covered all of these different integrative therapies, and it's really, I think, helpful to know how that can all address variances in pain management. So with that being said, let us get started talking about yoga. So it is truly my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. So for those of you that may not be familiar with Diane or haven't popped onto her education series that she recently did for us, she is a certified yoga therapist with specialties in both chronic pain and cancer. She became a 200-hour certified yoga teacher because she saw yoga as a way to deepen her own practice and a way to share tools with others for healing and resiliency. In 2018, she graduated and earned her yoga therapy certification from the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And then she completed the Professional Pain Care Distance Mentorship Program as part of Certified Pain Care Educator. And she also serves as a trainer for others. She is the founding partner in the Pain Care Collective, which is an online yoga therapy studio for chronic pain. So she is able to reach more and more of this community for those that are suffering. So we'll pop that link in the chat for you as well. But it is truly my pleasure to bring on with me our amazing speaker, Diane Kistler. Diane, thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited.
You are so welcome, and thank you for the offer of putting up the slides. Hence, my internet is a little iffy tonight. So welcome, and thank you for this opportunity and this honor. I am also a yoga provider for Unite for Her, and I find every time that I do a program with Unite for Her, it's just so full. And when I point to my heart, my heart feels very full, and I'm so glad that I can provide some of these experiences, not only the Tuesday yoga, but some of these talks on pain management. So I thought we would just begin with 3 breaths. I think to just kind of settle us. I don't know how many people are coming home from work or leaving or trying to get dinner ready. So just in your seat, whether you're in a chair, the floor, just take 3 breaths and feel that. So your eyes can be open or closed. And just like an hourglass, letting the sand just filter down toward the seat of your body. And I like to start every presentation with this, as well as kind of every practice that I have, my own and those that I share with others. So we will just begin with the next slide. This is kind of the title. So yoga really is the restraint of the fluctuations of the mind. What a wonderful thing to think that, through the practice of yoga, that we can quiet the mind a little bit. And no matter if you are going through diagnosis, treatment, post-treatment, metastatic, end of life, pain, nausea, weakness, the mind is always involved. Okay, we cannot separate that out. And that is really, truly the goal of yoga, is to reduce the suffering that we may have with a diagnosis and treatment and post-treatment and whatever else is going on. In yoga, we refer to this as a lovely Sanskrit word called dukkha. Dukkha means suffering. Okay, so whether we are avoiding something that could be suffering, or whether we're jumping right into something that could be suffering. And I mention that because a little bit later, as we get into what is pain and how in yoga do we think of pain, that will come in handy then. So in yoga, we have so many tools to work with this suffering on so many levels of not only ourselves, but outside of us. Okay. So it's just a matter of practice and kind of staying engaged. So we'll go to the next slide. All right. So a little bit ago, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, pain was seen as an issue with the tissues. And the treatments that evolved from that also dealt with the tissues, that pain is coming from the place where it hurts. Okay. With 20 or 30 years of research now, the researchers found that pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. So there's a lot in that one sentence. So they redefined what it is. But the first part is really important, an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. The suffering, right? That's the suffering that we have when we have pain. It feels awful. It maybe makes us depressed or anxious or fearful. Cognitively, we may not be as focused and be able to concentrate. So they looked at it as a whole person experience. Now, the second part of that definition, that resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage, is that tissue damage does not have to happen to have pain. And if you have chronic pain, you may know this, okay? Or maybe not. The reverse can happen as well, is that you could have tissue damage, but no pain. And I think of like, a bruise that I have, on my leg or something like that. I don't know how I did that bruise, but there's definite, tissue damage. My dad he loved to mow the lawn. And when he would get back from mowing the lawn, he would be covered in, lacerations and scrapes and from whatever. And he was like, I didn't feel a thing, but there was definite tissue damage. So I love that story about my dad. But pain is a whole person suffering. So it's a bio, social, and spiritual experience. It's everything. It's all encompassing. And if you yourself have pain, you know that. Okay. So the approach that we take with pain care yoga is to treat and support the whole person and their whole experience of pain. Okay. And I love the quote down there from Neil Pearson, who is my mentor, colleague, and friend. If we change any aspect of our existence, we change any aspect of our existence. Okay. The yogic approach to pain, you can see through the body, through your breath, energy, mind, emotions, senses, and this intellect that we have, this intuition to know ourselves, the deepest part, like our source, as well as that connection to something much bigger than ourselves. Okay, our purpose, right? Sometimes when we have that cancer diagnosis and go through treatment, we're like, what now? What is my purpose? Right? So we'll go to the next slide, Erin. Thank you. All right. Well, I can tell you the purpose of pain. The purpose of pain is always a protection mechanism. It is always a signal, a message to say, hey, we need to change our behavior. We need to try something different. Okay. The example of touching a hot stove or hitting your shin on a chair makes you go around that chair, or, oh, yes, stove is hot. I won't touch that. That, on a very basic level, is the purpose of pain, is to signal or message to your brain, to the rest of your body, to change what you're doing so that you don't get hurt. Okay, so that protective. The other ways that our body protects and our brain protects us is muscle weakness, throwing up, like if you had something that was poison, immune responses, numbness, muscle spasms, muscle tension. Okay, these are all ways that our body and our brain protect us. So very much pain makes you stop what you're doing, rest, get away, take a break, or change what you're doing, or change movement here. Okay. I just want to reiterate, or not reiterate because I haven't said it yet, but that pain is complex and it's very individual. Okay. So when you get those pain scales of 1 to 10, that just kind of gives the clinician an idea, but everybody's experience of pain is going to be different. So one person's 8, maybe another person's 4, okay? But it is information if the clinician is following you, because they can see if your pain is decreasing according to your scale and how you rate it, okay? Another thing that I want to really stress, and this is why I like doing these presentations, is that the science tells us, and there is actual research on this, that understanding pain and understanding pain in your own experience will help your pain system, will reduce your pain. It may not get rid of your pain, but now your perception of pain is in a better understanding. So hence, this is why we do this, right? Yep. All right, we will go to the next one. Thanks, Erin. All right. So this is, I always want to say this is an acute pain. It's not a chronic pain situation. So you understand that, we're talking about the hot stove or banging your shin. Okay. So my little guy at the bottom left, or woman, receives some type of input, a mechanical force of banging your shin, a chemical, they have something got burned on their skin, like even sunburn, a thermal, the hot stove. So there's something that begins this process of coming into these special nerves called nociceptors, okay? And their function is part of the pain system. They tell the rest of the body, as you see here, because that signal of receiving an input travels up to the spinal cord. Okay. And then we call it a danger signal rather than a pain signal, because it may not make pain, by the way. Okay. Like my dad riding the mower, from the cord, it goes up to the brain. Okay. So this danger signal gets processed at the spinal cord and then heads up to the brain. And there's not one pain center in your brain, there's multiple centers in your brain that's involved in the pain system. Okay. So that's it in a very basic thing. There's a signal, you get an input to your system, like my finger, then it gets sent to my spinal cord. Then if there's enough reactivity, let's say, chemical reactivity, it then gets sent to the brain. The brain then decides, okay, let me go through it. Was I ever here before? Did I touch the stove before? Was there pain? And then it may send a signal back down through the spinal cord, then into the area that received the input, okay, or received the hot stove, okay. So that's it in a nutshell. I think that's a really good, I did not have this the first time, let me just tell you, in my training, and then ensuing in my further training, I knew more, but my mouth went drop. That's how the pain system works. I thought pain happened at the point that you touch, but it goes through this process. Okay. So kind of cool, huh? Yep. All right. We'll go to the next one. Thank you. This is why I'm interested in it, because I think it's cool. Anyway. Okay. So about the nervous system, because that's what we're working with here. We're working with the nerves at the peripheries. We're working with the nerves at the spinal cord, and we're working with the whole nervous system. So the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. And the good news is that signals that come from the body can be modulated. Modulation is just basically regulated or changed, okay? And they can be modulated at the spinal cord, the brain, even in the periphery, okay, through movement, breathing, relaxation, mindset. If you're ruminating about your pain, it's going to increase your pain, okay. There are also certain neurotransmitters like GABA, and we have natural opioids in our, our system here. So these we can make a little bit stronger. If you've heard of tolerance or threshold, we can increase some of those pain tolerances or thresholds through these natural opioids. Okay. And I just want to say that we have the capacity to be aware of our nervous system. And I think the tools of yoga fit that very well. And we have the capacity to change, just like that quote from Neil Pearson. You know, if you change any aspect of your existence, you change any aspect of your existence. Things that we can change may be what we think, how we think, how we respond to our environment. Soft touch, self-touch, we'll do a little bit today in the short practice at the end. Taking a break, like I mentioned, you know, even if it's just for a few moments during the day. Okay. So there are different aspects of our nervous system, and I think it's a little too complex right now for this presentation, but would love to share it with anybody. So maybe they'll invite me back about more nervous system stuff. So, all right, we'll go to the next one. All right. So when pain is chronic, and remembering that pain affects the whole person and everything affects pain, okay, it is not a very good thing. But it's kind of like the alarm system doesn't quiet down. Okay. Remembering that pain is there to protect us. But when it becomes chronic, the alarm system is offline. You know, it's just continuing to go. Okay. The alarm system thinks that there is danger present, however real or perceived. What we think and what we say to ourselves could be a danger signal into our pain system. What we believe, our environment around us. So, you know, one of the things that we may do when we enter a room, and I think most of us, it is true that we scan, we make sure that the environment around us is safe. And if it doesn't feel safe, there may be some type of protection, okay, around that feeling of threat. Places we go, you know, our sensory, you know, our little feelers are out there. People in our lives may be a danger input to our pain system, and also things happening in our body. So as you go to treatment and post-treatment and you're healing and you're feeling things and you're not feeling things, that can also be a trigger into your pain system. You know, oh, is this, you know, a reoccurrence? So our alarm system becomes hypervigilant, where it's looking for signs of danger when perhaps there are none. Okay. So I don't know if any of this rings true for you, but you may be thinking about some experiences in your own life. And that is, you know, your pain system, but the alarm is not working as well. All right, we'll go to the next one, Erin. Okay, so our yoga. Questions that you may have if you're embarking on a yoga practice and you have pain right now, or you've experienced pain in a yoga class, and that can happen. I'm not going to say all yoga is, you know, pain-free. But one of the questions I get from students and my clients is how much pain is okay in yoga? And can I change my pain without changing my posture, without changing my breath, without changing my thoughts about this posture? Okay, so these are just some questions that pop up, and maybe you have that about yoga. Okay. Another question, whether it be yoga or another form of exercise, you may ask yourself is, do I avoid movement due to fear of pain or re-injury? Or do I endure a movement even after pain arises? And this goes back to that slide that was much earlier, about the suffering is, do I go full throttle if I'm feeling pain, or do I completely not move at all? And I want to say that in yoga, you are in charge. You are empowered to move more or take a break. Okay. The first strategy where they are avoiding movement, a person cannot increase their health of their tissues. And if they avoid movement, it just reinforces the belief that movement is dangerous. The second strategy of a person, ignoring the inner signals and just enduring a movement gives them a disconnect from the signals and what their body is telling them. So with pain care yoga and the practices that I share with my students and my clients is to have that inner awareness, that interoceptive awareness, which is just the awareness of the inner signals in your body. But also check in. Does this feel safe? Okay. And we'll go to the next slide because I think this goes in. So this is just telling you the benefits of yoga. If you've had a yoga practice, maybe you've experienced some of these. If you have cancer, maybe you have some of these, right? You have pain, you have fear of movement, there's overall stress, feeling like your quality of life is less than it used to be, right? Things are changing and have changed. Functional movements are more difficult. You may have lost that joy and connection to purpose, and even connecting socially, whether you're in active treatment or not, but things have shifted. The inability to have focus and concentration on your job or, the thoughts, and sleep may be an issue. So yoga supports a lot of this. Okay. So, which is a really wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you've had that yoga practice, maybe, some of these things already. So we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah. So back to what is pain care yoga. Okay. It's the ingredients for pain care yoga is movement. So physiologically, the body needs to move. This is where cellular repair happens, where oxygenation of your blood, healing happens, which is part of the cellular repair, cardiovascular health, and bone and muscle health. Okay, so pain care yoga is movement. There's breath work, which helps to regulate our nervous system. It releases tension, restores the chemical balance in the body. Again, cardiovascular health. It's great for so much. Mindfulness. I always think of this. It's not always what you do, but how you do it that matters. Being slow, mindful movements. And you need to have challenge in pain with this yoga. You need to move to your edge while still feeling safe. You need to also have relaxation. So there's that ease and also some, movement that's a little bit more difficult. It kind of takes you to that like edge of range of motion or something. Then finally, you need a daily care plan. So there's time for the relaxation, and it's conscious relaxation. There's time for challenge, and there's time for respite. Respite is kind of those times, whether you do a puzzle or watch your favorite Netflix series or read a book, it's kind of that no-brainer time. Okay. So that a daily care plan is always incorporated in a pain care yoga plan. All right, we will go to the next one. Great. So the movement guidelines. This is really key to answer some of those questions that I said previously. You know, how much movement is safe? How do I move? You want to have an awareness. You want to have that awareness of the interoception, the inner signals. You want to have an awareness of proprioception, of where your body is in space and time. And that's very helpful for balance. You know, where your foot is, where's your arm? Is there balance between the two sides? What do you feel with your body and the connection to the floor or the wall? You want to have some neuroception. Neuroception are the cues from your nervous system, which are under our radar. We may not be able to see them right away, but we tune into them, okay, to become more aware of our nervous system. And the big question is, do I feel safe? Do I feel safe doing this? Will I regret this later? Okay. The second area is regulation. So once you become aware of all of these things, then you move to the edge of maybe the increased pain. You may modify your position. You may modify your breath. You may even look at what you're thinking right now. You know, judgment can be very like a trigger to the pain system. So then you modify what you're doing, right? Taking a break, try something else, try some releasing of tension. You breathe calmly. And then you may go back and say, okay, now what kind of awareness do I have? Then the final kind of step of the guidelines, and these circulate back and forth, by the way. It's not like you do one and then you forget it and then you go to the next one, but you're kind of recirculating. But the final one, let's just call it final for now, is discernment, which is a monitoring. So based on those changes that I made in regulation and the ones that I observe, now I have the wisdom to choose how I behave. So as you are continuing with awareness, continuing with changing what you're doing, you discern whether you're going to continue with what you're doing. Or do you go back to changing what you are doing or being aware? So these interweave throughout. It seems like a really big system, but once it's practiced and incorporated into not only a yoga practice, but even into your everyday life. And the example I'll give there is some of my clients now go through this process when they're doing tasks in the house, vacuuming, for instance. You know, one would say, before I would just vacuum the whole bottom floor. Now I just do part of one room and I take a break and then I go back. So that person has now discerned and the wisdom to know where their edge is and if it feels safe for them. But that is a practice for sure. So that's a lot. And I'm happy to share these movement guidelines with anyone a little bit more. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So we're going to take about, I know we wanted time for questions. I would say about 8 minutes or so, maybe 10, to just do a little practice. So you can be aware of pain care yoga. I'm going to move back onto my mat and we'll start with conscious awareness, then a little bit of breath work, moving the spine, a little bit of challenge. So you've seen some of these words before, and then some relaxation. So you do not have to be on the floor. A chair is a wonderful way to be. In fact, I should have brought my chair over, but I'll show you on the floor here. And I also, if you are either on the chair or floor, having something to support your spine is a nice addition. So whatever position that you feel comfortable. And we'll start with a body scan. So a body scan is just taking you through the different parts of the body. You just become aware of them and then move on. And maybe as you become aware of those body parts, you notice a sensation there. Okay. So I invite you to just wiggle a little bit, find a comfortable seat for you. Nice. Wiggling's fun. And then start with your feet and notice your feet as they are. Then bring your attention to your lower legs, then to your upper legs. Bring your attention to your pelvis, your belly, your low back, your rib cage, your mid back, to your heart center, your chest, your upper back, down to your hands, your lower arms, your upper arms, and your shoulders. And bring your awareness to that little space at the base of your throat, little notch, your neck, and your head. And whatever you discovered there, maybe you just say to yourself, that's interesting, with a little bit of curiosity. And then take note that you have breath moving in and breath moving out. The breath moving in may be a different temperature than the breath moving out. Your breath may be fast or slow, deep or shallow. And as you breathe in, maybe note as interesting that you feel your body move as you breathe. And then the next thing we're going to do is just bring our palms together and give them a little soft stroking, a little rub. This technique works with the nervous system, as there are a lot of nerve endings in our palms and fingers, rightly so, to keep us protected, right, and safe. And then we're going to bring our warmed hands, one to the forehead and one to the back of the skull, and just holding on tenderly, supporting the head, supporting the mind, finding some grounding in this. Notice if anything changes in your breath. One more breath in. And maybe this time letting the breath out through the mouth, through a sigh as you release the hands. Ah, good. From here, we're going to start to move the spine a little bit. So I welcome you and invite you to maybe rock a little, with a rhythmic rocking side to side. This is very accessible for chair and floor. And you can even do this standing, rocking a little side to side. And then if you would like to rock a little forward and back. So we're moving on the circumference of our pelvis right now. If you're seated. Rhythmic rocking can be very soothing to our nervous system. And then coming back to center, we'll place one hand on our low belly and one hand back to our heart space. And in the next breath, we're going to try to breathe in just a little bit longer, just so where it still feels comfortable, right? This may be using the movement guidelines. And breathe out a little bit longer. And again, breathe in a little bit longer. And breathe out a little bit longer. And then we're going to add smoother to the breath. So breathe in a little bit longer and a little bit smoother. And breathe out a little bit longer and a little bit smoother. You can even keep these words as a mantra in your mind. Inhale to longer, smoother. Exhale to longer, smoother. And then the last quality of our breath that we'll layer on here, as long as it feels comfortable for you, is softer. So breathing in longer, smoother, softer. Breathing out longer, smoother, softer. And one more like that. In for longer, smoother, softer. Out longer, smoother, softer. And we'll release the hands back to our legs and walk the fingertips out here. And we're just going to slide our way to a little bit of a side lean. So this is part of moving the spine. These are lateral stretches. And as you move, check in. Are you here at the edge of increased pain? Does this feel safe? Are you breathing in and breathing out? What are your thoughts and beliefs and emotions? And we'll do one more on either side. And then as we come back to center, we'll take a very gentle twist to one side, maybe placing one hand on your leg and the other behind you. A few breaths here in this gentle rotation of the spine. Checking in. And if you need to adjust, right, so it does feel safe, maybe you come out. And then we'll take a slow walk over to the other side. And finding center once again. So you notice I'm moving here very slowly, mindfully. So this next one will extend the legs out. If you're seated or if you're in a chair, maybe you just give those legs a little and just roll them out a little. And we'll do a little movements for the joint freeing. So we have a few more minutes here. So we'll take one foot in and you can hold on to that leg either here or back and just circle the foot around. Give it a nice little movement and circle it in the other direction. And then we'll do the same thing with the knee. So you can see we're circling, but we're starting to increase the challenge to our practice. We have to hold ourselves up against gravity, go in the other direction. So there's a little more challenge happening. The knees, maybe you're, does this feel safe? Can you slow it down or even visualize? We can use visualization and imagery to visualize. And then we're going to move to the hip. So maybe holding on to that leg or that foot or just wrapping your hands around and circling through the hip. And circling the other way. So a little more challenge. And as we're done these circles, I invite you to send that leg out and just bring that practice of awareness in. How does that one leg that you worked, the joints, feel versus the other? Is there a difference? Very important for that neuroception I was mentioning, to be aware of these changes because it actually changes our nervous system. So then we'll come to the other side. A few more moments, circling the foot and reversing. And then the knee, maybe holding on and just doing little circles. So the power of imagery is that, and circle in the other direction. Many athletes use imagery to envision, what they're going to be competing in, and it has been helpful for their endurance and their practice. And then you can take it into some of those hip circles. Right. And we'll reverse that. Nice. And extend that leg again. Notice. Good. All right. So as far as the relaxation, you can come if you're seated onto your back, or if you're seated on the floor, you can come onto your back, or if you're seated in a chair, just wiggle yourself so that you're most comfortable in that chair, that you feel maybe your feet on the floor and you have the back of the chair for support. If anybody has a blanket they want to put on them, we're going to do about a short progressive relaxation through the body, very similar to the body scan, but this time there's going to be a gentle squeeze of the body part that I mentioned, and then a slow, mindful release of that body part. Sound good? Okay. So in whatever position that you want to take for your relaxation, come into that. Do your little wiggles, find some comfort and centering and connection to whatever surface you're touching. Your eyes can be open or closed. And we're going to take our awareness to our toes. So I'm just going to extend mine out just to show you. And you're going to inhale and squeeze the toes as much as you can. And then a very slow exhale, slow release of the toes. And just notice the toes. Good. And we'll do the same thing with the leg muscles. So if you can, squeeze the leg muscles toward the bones as you breathe in, and then a very slow release of the leg muscles as you breathe out. Wonderful. And then the pelvis and the glute muscles. So this one's kind of easy, for me at least. Squeeze your glutes as much as you can as you breathe in. And then a very slow release of the glute muscles. Notice your lower half of your body. We'll draw our belly button, our navel center toward the back as we breathe in. So we're contracting, and then a slow release as you breathe out. Coming down to the fingers, make a gentle fist as you breathe in, and then a slow release as you breathe out. Maybe the hands drop. Notice your hands. Maybe they feel warm and tingly. Then we're going to take the arms and we're just going to squeeze the arms into our side as we breathe in. And as you breathe out, let those arms relax. Good. Shoulders, always a trouble spot, right? Holding a lot of stress and responsibility on the shoulders. As you inhale, lift the shoulders toward the ears, give a squeeze. And as you exhale, there's a slow release and we let them drop from the ears. This next one is the funniest one because we're going to squeeze all and tense all the muscles in our facial features. Okay, so as you breathe in, go ahead and squeeze everything. Yep, you got it. It may look silly. And as you breathe out, let it all go. Ah. Notice how you feel. Notice your body. Feel your nervous system more regulated, your pain system a little more at peace. The last thing we're going to do, and then I'll come up for questions, is just bring our palms into heart center. And then we're going to open them up as wide as they go right now in this moment. Take another breath in, maybe a little longer, and then bring them in and give yourself a hug. Yeah, maybe a little rock. This is also a really nice gesture of tenderness, loving comfort, right? And palms again at the heart center. In yoga, we finish with namaste, which means I honor the light in you as you honor the light in me. When you are there and I am here, we are one. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'll scoop myself on up for any questions that you may have. The time goes too fast. A lot of material. I could really go on much more than this, but this was kind of a high level.
Wonderful. Do you want me to share your last slide, Diane? Because it's a good one, I think, just for helping when someone's experiencing pain. Let me pop this on the screen for you.
Yeah, pop it up again. Yes. Yeah.
Love this.
Yeah. Yeah. It says it all.
Yeah.
Witness it without the judgment is pretty much, and those thoughts and beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these are some of the ways, you can consciously release tension. We did today with the progressive relaxation, or the holding of the breath, that awareness practice, muscular imbalances, that takes more of that interoception, that inner awareness. But as you practice, you become, better at that. And non-attachment, non-attachment is this too shall, that's the phrase, this too shall pass. And that is very, very true. But if we start to protect and tense around things and grasp onto them, you can see my body language, is just pulling in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I feel like anytime, we have that kind of pain, that's immediately what happens. We tense, we hold, we clench, that's that response. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's feeding the alarm system.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying this is not safe. And your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system is just saying, all right, well, I have a memory of that. So, and that's when it becomes chronic, when we tense around things. And going through breast cancer, any type of cancer, there's a lot of this. I know it very well,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. I'm curious, Diane, for those that are with us that may be avid yoga practitioners already, if you have any guidance in terms of how they can incorporate this pain practice into their own practice that they're already doing.
Yeah. Well, not sure, what type of practice, if they are going through a fast vinyasa practice, and that's what they feed on. But I still think you can use the movement guidelines, very much so, and sometimes a deeper practice, Erin, is really one that's slower.
Yeah.
And that you're really feeling what's going on. Because the portal of the body is one way to get into yoga. I mean, there's 8 limbs of yoga. I didn't get into that tonight, but there's 8 limbs. So you can come through the breath portal, mindfulness, meditation, mudras, so many different tools and portals. So they may have a deeper practice if they slow it down a little.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Anyone that wants to share their experience with our practice today, I'm going to put Diane's contact information and her website in the chat. But please feel free to come off of mute, share your experience, perhaps how you're feeling, and as we're waiting, Diane, I know a lot of times when we're looking at videos in our education library or just in my own practice, I will hear teachers mention the use of props to provide support, to even help a person as they're reaching that limit, finding that challenge space. What are some of those different props that you recommend? I know you mentioned a blanket kind of seated underneath of us, but what else could someone use to provide that added support?
Absolutely. So blocks are great. I have a bolster here, and bolsters come in different sizes. I have these wonderful cushions on my couch that have the deepest, relaxation and shavasana. So, firm cushions are nice if you don't want to go to this expense. Blocks are awesome, straps. When you get to maybe some practices like what's called yoga nidra, which is conscious sleep, something with blankets and an eye pillow, anything that can be very comfortable. So many times we don't have access to, these yoga props, but anything that supports you and holds you up. Because if your body, especially if you're in a longer held pose and your body is just kind of out there in space, that may not feel safe. But then again, maybe someone has had some trauma and putting something on them doesn't feel safe. So you really has to be to the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the
Great
fact that
question.
you mentioned even addressing yoga nidra supporting sleep, because certainly
Yeah.
pain, joint discomfort that can affect a person's ability to get that restorative sleep, that is so important. And so you calling that out as a way to sort of support that sleep hygiene and entering into good, setting a person up for, good quality
Yes.
sleep. I mean, I love that you called that out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent practice. And there's so many great free apps, Insight Timer. I'm not sure if Calm has a free one, but there's a lot out on YouTube, so you can find them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a comment that came in. One of our attendees did a lot of yoga during the pandemic. She
Mm.
found it had a huge benefit on her blood pressure. She got away from it on the last year due to pain. And there's a lot of poses that affect her SI joint. So she'll get back into it to help relieve that. So love hearing that feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Oh my gosh. Pandemic
Yeah.
time anyway.
I
Yeah.
know that should all drive us to yoga. So, great question from Madeline. And maybe we'll use this to wrap up for the night. But I love this. Oftentimes we're wondering, well, what's the magic time that we have to have in a yoga practice? So, what do you suggest in terms of how much time someone should spend
Mm.
to calm the system down with their breath? Is there a minimum? Does it vary? What do you often suggest?
Yeah. Yeah. No, great question, Madeline. Um, it really has to fit the person, their schedule, their availability. If they have kids, they may only have time for like the three breaths that we began the presentation with.
Yeah.
Um, there's a great book by James Nestor called Breath. If it's, you want to read something, there are like certain more efficient ways to breathe through the nasal, nostrils instead of the mouth. Breathing 5 count breaths versus, 2 count breaths, will help with the oxygenation and the CO2 leaving the chemical imbalances. Um, I would say when they experience a shift, they know
Hmm.
they're in the zone.
Hmm.
Does that take 3 breaths? Does that take 10 breaths? It's up to the individual. Um, this morning, I'll just quickly give you an example. I was setting an intention for my day and I was trying to think of it right off of waking up. And then I did some full diaphragmatic breath, 3-part breath, and my intention just happened. So I mean, that's not really answering Madeline's question, but it's just like an idea of like, how breath can set the day. And I only
Absolutely.
needed a couple breaths to be like, okay, now I have my intention.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And also sharing a very recent experience I had with a friend, just sort of talking about our work days and the busyness. And she said to me, "Do you breathe during the day?" And I said, I know exactly what you mean. And
Yeah,
no, I
right,
don't. But that's the
right.
reminder that Madeline is talking about, to take that moment to
Take a moment.
breathe and calm.
Yeah,
Or if you're in discomfort, taking a little bit of time to do that movement, find a little bit of challenge and the relaxation and spine movement. I mean, even just, setting a little intention during the day for that, can help
hmm,
reset and just calm the body down. I love that.
yeah. And if you make your yoga practice like a ritual, a sacred ritual, um, that you're going to do 10 to 15 minutes a day, that's your time to practice some of that breath so that when you are running around with your monkey mind and your whole day, then you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. So that awareness becomes more second nature
Yeah.
if you have a more consistent yoga practice.
Yep. And I
Does that
do.
make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely, because I think it speaks to the word, the term practice that we often see or hear associated with yoga. It is a practice. It is not
It's a
perfection. It is a
practice.
practice. So yeah,
Yeah.
building that into your day. I love that. I love that. Sue
Yeah.
also said the three breaths can work wonders when done mindfully. Absolutely. She loves that. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Three little breaths.
I know we can all do that. So wonderful. Diane, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Hopefully, for all of you that are with us, this gave a little bit of insight in terms of, again, like utilizing these integrative therapies for pain management, and utilizing some of the techniques that Diane taught us to perhaps start your own yoga practice or build this into your own movement that you're already working into your very busy life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for inviting me on. And
Absolutely.
have a
Wonderful.
wonderful evening, everybody. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So I popped Diane's email in the chat, also her website, dianekistleryogatherapy.com. So be sure to check that out. Plus, we've got lots of videos on our UFH Connect video library that you can use to guide your own practice, as well as Diane's recent 6-week series that she did with us that we streamed live on Facebook. So if you're looking for ways to get started, we've got lots of ways for you. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining this evening.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us. If you want to rewatch or share this segment with someone that you feel will benefit from this information and following this practice, it will be on our video library. So please feel free to share it with them. I think we can benefit from all of this. So a couple reminders as we are moving right along with our education series this month. So remember, next week, we've got our speaker series on the 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, all about rhythmic movement and neuropathy. So we will be joined by Dr. Marianne Lustberg from Yale Medical Center. And then on the 21st, we have our virtual hangout at 5:30 p.m., focusing on healing points, how acupuncture and acupressure support cancer care. And we will be joined by Dr. Michelle Loy of Weill Cornell. So another several great segments coming up. Please be sure to check out our UFH Connect video library for all of the topics that we've covered. If there's something that you don't see that you're interested in, please let us know, because this is an ever-growing video library. And again, I want to take one more time to thank our education sponsors, because we could not continue to bring you these segments without their support. So tonight's segment is brought to you by West, Merck, Lilly, and Gilead Sciences. Additional support from our gold sponsors, Pfizer, GSK, and Daiichi Sankyo, plus additional support from AbbVie, Agendia, and Tercera Therapeutics. So big thanks to them for all of these ongoing segments. So hopefully I will see all of you throughout the month of May. Everyone, let's do a little bit of yoga before we go to bed this evening to kind of set the tone for the night and the week. And have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. And thanks so much for joining us. And thanks again, Diane.